Right now, as you're watching this, there's someone inside you that you absolutely hate. Someone you've been running from your entire life. Someone you'd rather pretend doesn't exist. But here's the terrifying truth. The more you deny this inner enemy, the stronger it becomes. Think about it. What's that one trait you can't stand in other people? That behavior that makes your blood boil instantly. The arrogance, the selfishness, the weakness you judge so harshly. Here's what Carl Jung discovered that will shake you to your core. You're not seeing them. You're seeing yourself. This hidden part of you, what Jung called your shadow, isn't just some abstract concept. It's the reason you sabotage your own success. It's why your relationships keep failing in the same patterns. It's the invisible force that's been controlling your life while you thought you were in charge. But what if I told you that learning to love this inner enemy, this dark side you've been fighting, is actually the key to becoming truly free? What if everything you've been taught about self-improvement is backwards? By the end of this video, you'll understand why embracing your darkness might be the most radical act of self-love you'll ever commit. Picture this. It's 1912, and Carl Jung is sitting across from yet another patient who can't understand why they keep destroying everything good in their life. A successful businessman who sabotages every promotion. A loving mother who pushes away everyone she cares about. A brilliant artist who can't finish a single masterpiece. Jung noticed something disturbing. These weren't isolated cases. Every single person, including himself, carried this mysterious force that seemed to work against their conscious desires. But here's where it gets fascinating. The traits these patients despised most in others were exactly the behaviors they unconsciously exhibited themselves. The businessman who raged about lazy people was procrastinating on his most important projects. The mother who criticized selfish individuals was emotionally unavailable to her own children. The artist who mocked commercial sellouts was secretly terrified of his own success. Jung called this phenomenon the shadow, not some mystical concept, but a very real psychological reality. Your shadow is every part of yourself that you've deemed unacceptable. Every emotion you've been told is bad. Every desire you've been taught to suppress. Every aspect of your personality that doesn't fit your idealized self-image. But here's what Jung realized that changed psychology forever. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your disowned power. Think about it. What takes more energy? A trait you accept about yourself, or one you constantly fight? The businessman wasn't lazy. He was rebelling against a system that demanded he sacrifice his creativity. The mother wasn't selfish. She was protecting herself from being consumed by others' needs. Your shadow contains not just your negative traits, but also your hidden strengths, your suppressed creativity, your authentic power that society taught you to hide. The question isn't whether you have a shadow. You do. The question is, will you keep letting it control you from the darkness? Or will you finally turn on the lights? Why do we wage this internal war against ourselves? The answer is both simple and devastating. We've been programmed to. From the moment you took your first breath, society began sculpting you into an acceptable shape. Good boys don't get angry. Nice girls don't want attention. Smart people don't make mistakes. Strong people don't cry. Every time you expressed a natural human emotion or desire that didn't fit the mold, you learned to push it down, lock it away, pretend it didn't exist. But here's the psychological truth that will blow your mind. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. Those parts of yourself you rejected, they didn't disappear. They went underground, forming what Jung called your shadow. And from the shadows, they've been running your life ever since. Think about your last relationship conflict. I guarantee you weren't just fighting with your partner. You were fighting with your own disowned parts. When you accuse someone of being too emotional, you're really saying, I'm terrified of my own feelings. When you judge someone as selfish, you're actually rejecting your own unmet needs. This is projection in action, the psychological mechanism where we see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. It's like wearing sunglasses and complaining that the world is too dark. The very things that trigger you most intensely in other people. Those are your shadow's calling cards, desperately trying to get your attention. And here's the cruel irony. The harder you fight your shadow, the stronger it becomes. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The more force you use, the more violently it will eventually explode to the surface. This is why people who pride themselves on being good often have the most dramatic falls. This is why the most judgmental people are usually battling their own demons. The cost of this internal civil war is astronomical. Anxiety, depression, addiction, toxic relationships, self-sabotage, these aren't character flaws. They're symptoms of a psyche at war with itself. You're literally using your life force to fight against your own nature. But what if there was another way? What if instead of being your own worst enemy, you could become your own best ally? If you're ready to discover how embracing your darkness can actually set you free, hit that like button, because what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about personal growth. Here's where Jung's approach becomes revolutionary, and where most self-help gets it completely wrong. Instead of trying to eliminate your shadow, Jung proposed something radical: integration. Not destruction, but acceptance. Not war, but peace negotiations with the parts of yourself you've been fighting. But how do you love something you've been taught to hate? How do you embrace what feels monstrous? Jung discovered that the path isn't through denial or suppression. It's through conscious acknowledgement and understanding. Here's a practical technique Jung used: shadow work. Start by identifying what triggers you most in others. That person who's too aggressive? Ask yourself, where in my life do I need more assertiveness? That individual who's attention-seeking? Consider, when do I deny my own need to be seen and valued? Your triggers are actually your teachers, pointing toward the disowned parts of yourself that are crying out for integration. Look at the most creative and authentic people throughout history. Artists like Frida Kahlo, leaders like Nelson Mandela, innovators like Steve Jobs. They didn't become extraordinary by being perfect. They became extraordinary by integrating their darkness with their light. Kahlo channeled her pain into breathtaking art. Mandela transformed his anger into revolutionary compassion. Jobs used his ruthless perfectionism to create beauty. Your so-called negative traits aren't bugs in your system. They're features waiting to be properly utilized. Your anger might be your passion in disguise. Your selfishness might be your healthy boundaries trying to emerge. Your pride might be your self-worth fighting to be recognized. The integration process isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming whole. It's about stopping the exhausting performance of being good all the time and starting the liberating journey of being real. When you stop rejecting parts of yourself, you stop projecting them onto others. When you stop fighting your nature, you start channeling it constructively. But here's the beautiful paradox Jung discovered. The moment you stop trying to be perfect, you become infinitely more lovable. The moment you embrace your humanity, you become genuinely powerful. If this resonates with you and you want to continue this journey of self-discovery, subscribe to the channel. Because understanding your shadow is just the beginning of reclaiming your authentic self. What happens when you finally lay down your weapons in the war against yourself? The transformation is nothing short of miraculous, and it's backed by decades of psychological research. First, your creativity explodes. Why? Because creativity requires access to your full emotional spectrum, including the parts you've been hiding. When you stop censoring your unacceptable thoughts and feelings, you unlock a wellspring of authentic expression. Think about the most powerful art, music, or writing that's ever moved you. It didn't come from someone playing it safe. It came from someone brave enough to show their whole truth, shadows and all. Your relationships transform dramatically. When you stop projecting your disowned parts onto others, you stop being triggered by their behavior. That person who used to drive you crazy with their neediness, suddenly you can see their vulnerability as human rather than threatening. You become capable of genuine intimacy because you're no longer hiding half of yourself from the people you love. The anxiety that's been your constant companion, it begins to dissolve. Anxiety often stems from the exhausting effort of maintaining a false self while suppressing your authentic nature. When you integrate your shadow, you stop living in fear of being found out because there's nothing left to hide. You become comfortable with your imperfections because you understand they're part of your humanity. Here's a real example. I once knew someone who spent years trying to suppress their competitive nature because they believed it was ugly. They were constantly anxious, felt like a fraud, and struggled with depression. The moment they embraced their competitive drive and channeled it into healthy challenges, sports, career goals, personal growth, everything changed. Their energy returned, their confidence soared, and ironically, they became more collaborative because they weren't fighting an internal battle anymore. Self-compassion naturally emerges when you stop demanding perfection from yourself. You begin treating yourself with the same kindness you'd show a good friend. This isn't about lowering standards. It's about operating from wholeness rather than deficiency. The ripple effects are profound. When you're no longer at war with yourself, you stop being at war with the world. You become a force for healing rather than division, because you've learned to hold space for contradictions, for complexity, for the full spectrum of human experience. We've traveled together through the depths of Jung's most profound discovery, that the very parts of ourselves we've been taught to reject hold the keys to our liberation. You've stayed with me through this entire journey of shadow work, and that tells me something powerful about who you are. You're not someone who settles for surface-level answers. You're someone brave enough to look into the mirror and see not just the light, but the darkness that makes you whole. So here's your invitation to completeness. Right now, I want you to think of one trait you criticize most harshly in other people. Got it? Now ask yourself this revolutionary question. How might this trait, when properly integrated, actually serve me? Your judgment of others' selfishness might be your healthy boundaries trying to emerge. Your criticism of others' arrogance might be your confidence waiting to be claimed. Your irritation with others' sensitivity might be your own emotional intelligence seeking expression. This is the moment where everything changes. This is where you stop being a victim of your own psychology and become its master. Because here's what Jung understood that most people never will. You don't need to be perfect to be complete. You don't need to eliminate your darkness to find your light. You need to embrace the totality of who you are. Imagine a world where everyone did this work, where people stopped projecting their shadows onto others and started integrating them into their wholeness, where leaders governed from authenticity rather than persona, where relationships were built on truth rather than performance, where creativity flowed freely because nothing was deemed unacceptable. That world starts with you. It starts with your willingness to love the parts of yourself you've been taught to hate. It starts with your courage to be human in a world that demands perfection. If this message has touched something deep within you, if you're ready to begin this journey of integration, write the word whole in the comments below. Let it be your declaration that you're done fighting yourself and ready to embrace your complete humanity. You've made it this far in this journey with me, and that shows incredible courage. The path to authenticity isn't easy, but it's the only path to true freedom. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your power waiting to be reclaimed. The question isn't whether you'll integrate it. The question is, will you do it consciously, or will life force you to do it through crisis? The choice, as always, is yours.